say the game is getting old. Monday morning and your coffee's cold.
Hey everyone, and welcome again to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and I am so excited about the show. I know, I say it every week. Jay, you're always excited about your show. I know, but you know what? Here's the thing. I keep getting better and better guests every time I do the show. Listen, the other guests have been great, right? But the new guests get to be phenomenal, and today is no exception. I have an amazing guest. I'm telling you, today's show is a question I probably get so frequently, I can't even tell you how often I get it. Somebody asked me the other day, what do I need to do to start a business? And I thought, oh, that's a show. That's a show. Well, I've got the man with the answers today, and we're going to talk to him. But let's do what we do every week when we start the show, and that is, let's talk about the 4 areas of your life and how are you doing? Right? We're 4-part people. We are physical people. We are mental people. We're emotional people. We are spiritual people. And how are you doing? On a scale of 1 to 10, let's start physically. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you're miserable, 10 being you're outstanding. Where are you at on that scale of 1 to 10? Are you a 3, 4, 5? So, I mean, when I say physical, I'm asking you, like, how's your diet? How's your exercise? What are you doing to get yourself better? And this isn't an issue of getting you from a 3 to a 10. I want you to get from a 3 to a 3.5, okay? What do you need to change just to get yourself a little bit better? What small step can you be doing today to help you physically, all right? All right, there's the physical. Let's talk about the mental. What are you doing on a scale of 1 to 10? Where are you at, and what are you doing to change your mental side? You say, what do you mean mental? Well, we feed our stuff. We feed our brain all sorts of stuff. We feed our brain things like, news, right? But it can also affect us in a very negative way. But what are you doing to grow yourself? Like, are you reading books? What have you been reading? Are you reading something that's expanding your mind? Maybe you're taking up a new hobby, like learning to do something with woodworking or painting or an instrument, or maybe you're learning a new language. All of that stuff helps your brain, helps that mental side of you. So where will you be on a scale of 1 to 10? All right, good. Let's go on to emotionally. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being bad, 10 being awesome, where are you at emotionally? And when I say emotionally, how well are you able to control your emotions? Are the little things getting to you? Are you just flying off the handle? Are you able to relate to other people's emotions? So where are you at today? Remember, it's not getting from, a 5 to a 10. If you're 5, you feel like you're average, well, then get me to a 5.5. But what do you got to do to help yourself emotionally? Do you need to, sometimes exercise can actually help us emotionally, right? So because what it could do is we could get out some of that negative energy. And then sometimes it's just being intentional, going, you know what, I'm just not going to let this hurt me. I'm going to make a choice. And that can be all part of it too as well. And then finally, where are you at spiritually? And I get this all the time, and I say it all the time. People go, Jay, I'm not a spiritual person. Well, yes, you are. I promise you that you have faith in something outside of yourself. Sometimes people even call it karma. They believe in karma, right? And you go, well, I'm an atheist. Well, okay, so what you're saying is you believe in yourself, right? You believe in what you do. So you've made yourself your own God. Okay, so be it. So how's that going for you? But if you do believe in God, well, great. How is that relationship going for you? Here's what we know. When we're connected to something outside of ourselves, is it giving you a sense of peace? Is it giving you a sense that you've got a centeredness, that you are able to get through life? Because what we find is that when people are developed in that spiritual area, they're just more solid people, and they just have a better way of being able to handle life. So, and think about these 4 areas as like the legs of a table. All right. Imagine that you have these 4 areas of the legs of a table on a scale of 1 to 10, and imagine they're off balance. Try eating off an unbalanced table, right? That the plate's going to slide off. Or if the table is all 3s, how low would it be to try to eat off of a table? Right? We want to get that table into a good, stable place. So I'm going to ask you those things regularly. Well, now I got to tell you something, because I believe this person that I'm about to introduce you to is, I think, one of the most well-balanced people I know, and I got to be honest with you. He's more than just probably one of the most knowledgeable people that I know. He's really a friend. And so let me introduce you. His name is Jeff Snell. He is a principal broker and founder and COO of Enlign Business Brokers and Advisors. He is broker to one of the largest business brokerages and advisory firms in the state of North Carolina. He sold over 100 businesses as part of Enlign Business Brokers. He's completed over 500 business evaluations. He serves on the board of directors for the International Business Brokers Association. He is chairman of Certified Business Intermediary Credentialing Committee, Mergers and Acquisition Master Intermediary. He's a lifetime certified business intermediary and an accredited business intermediary, and has been awarded the International Business Brokers Association Fellow of the IBBA, which is the International Business Brokers Association Award, and was the 2017 Tom West Award winner. He is a speaker, he is a coach, he is a mentor, he is so much more, but he's also my friend. Would you please welcome to the show, and Jeff, welcome to the show, and everybody, this is Jeff Snell. Thank you, Jeff, for being on the show.
Well, thank you, Jay, for having me. That intro was very flattering. But of all the accolades you mentioned, I think being among your friends is one of the highest honors. So thank you for that introduction, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And by the way, folks, I just want to let you know that Jeff is being brought to you today, not by a letter. I know, I almost said it. I was like, he's brought to you by the letter A, right? I remember my Sesame Street days. No, he's brought to you by the La Jolla Writers Conference. Whether you're an aspiring author who has yet to put pen to paper, someone intent on writing a book to augment your business, a writer on the cusp of submitting to agents, or someone who wants to know more about the different and ever-evolving, changing methods of publishing and publication, the La Jolla Writers Conference is the place for you. It is October 26th through 28th at La Jolla, California, at the Hyatt Regency in La Jolla. If you're interested in more information, go to LaJollaWritersConference.com. That's LaJolla, writersconference.com. And we are so grateful that they are sponsoring today's show, and Jeff Snell as well. So,
absolutely, always grateful for the sponsors. For without them, we cannot exist. And by coincidence, Jay, I've actually been to that hotel. It's a fantastic venue. It really is. This was probably 25 years ago, wow. And I was attending a venture tech conference for a technology company that I owned at the time. But the only reason I raised the issue, aside from it being a beautiful venue, is I actually met Michael Douglas in the elevator there.
Oh, really?
I was standing on the elevator getting ready to go down to the conference room, and the door stopped, and two guys with dark suits that were almost as big as you stepped on, and directly behind them, this guy stepped in, eyes met, and I smiled, and he smiled back, and he said, "Yes, it's me." Turned around, went down the elevator, and got up, went about our business.
That's fantastic. Well, this conference...
He was filming a movie at the time.
This conference is kind of unique because there's 1,600 writers' conference across the country. This one is rated in the top 80 or so conferences of the 1,600. And it literally, they bring in volunteer folks who are best-selling authors, publicists, and people who do the publishing business, and it's like a 1-to-5 ratio because they only allow 200 people to get in to this writing.
Wow, you can't beat that.
Yeah, so it's really cool. So, but it's really cool. It's a really cool event. That's why I really think that, and so many people, you and I've talked about this. I've written a book, and I know you're working on one, and it's a tough thing to do. Writing a book's not easy, and we have friends who do it, and it's a tough business. So, and speaking of business, one of the questions I get so regularly, and matter of fact, it just happened on Facebook. Somebody messaged me and said, "How do I start? What do I need to know? What do I need to know to start a business?" And if somebody came to you and said, because this is what's happening in our world. We don't want to work for anybody. We want to work for ourselves. We want to be able to set our own hours. We want to be able to kind of control our own schedule. We want all that control, but starting a business is hard. So what should you consider? What should you think about if you're going to start a business?
Well, I certainly agree that starting a business is a challenge, and one that many people aspire to, but may be daunted by all the knowns and unknowns of what is required to do that. I would say the first and probably most important step, which may in fact be one of the easier steps, is to align yourself with a business attorney who's familiar with the laws of the state and the region, the county or city that you're in, so that you're in simple compliance. The last thing we want to do is start a business and start it with problems that are going to start unfolding as the months and years go on, because we perhaps don't have a permit that's required, or we're not properly registered with the Secretary of State. These things are not complicated. They're certainly not expensive, but it's important to cross your I's and let's cross our T's and dot our I's when we're getting these things off the ground, so that we don't have a lot of wasted time and effort down the road fixing things that could have been very easily handled by a competent business attorney on the front end.
So, okay, the number two, I have listeners all over the United States, but the number two most listened to state that listens to this show on a regular basis, the podcast. And by the way, if you're interested in the podcast and you're an iTunes user, it's anditunes.com. If you're an iHeart user, it's just AND. That's a new direction, iHeartRadio.com, and you can just go and pick up the podcast there. But California is my number two state that listens to this show, downloads the most podcasts. Is there something significantly different about when you talk to starting a business? Are state laws that diverse that they could be that different?
Well, they really are, and I'm glad you mentioned California. California and Florida are known as jurisdictions that have a lot of business guidelines and requirements to stay compliant within their jurisdictions. California is especially known for their environmental concerns. So depending upon the type of industry or business that you're trying to start, you may need to have certain clearances. The easy example is if you want to operate a service station, vehicle service station, or a gasoline station, EPA is going to do phase 1, 2, and 3 ground studies to make sure that the land is not contaminated. If it is, then there's remediation costs and brownfields, and these are all things that, again, a competent business attorney can guide you through. It shouldn't be scary, shouldn't be terribly costly, but it's important to make sure that you've entered into this new venture in a way that you're not setting up problems that are going to come back and haunt us down the road.
So great advice, Jeff. And by the way, we're Jeff Snell, COO and founder of Enlign Business Brokers, and we're talking about starting a business, and we're going to talk about what makes business successful. But one of the things I'm curious about, and I completely understand that you want to kind of create the foundation with the attorney and the business attorney, kind of get all your I's dotted and T's crossed. But after that, then is there a kind of like a money ratio? Like if you're interested, let's say I literally had somebody ask me, they wanted to run a quick shop, some sort of gas station / food shop, right? And
convenience store.
Yeah, convenience store. And somebody was asking, thank you, I couldn't find that word for whatever reason.
That's okay.
So is there a money, do you need to how do you manage the money part, right? Because I think people think, I just need enough money to get by the business, but is there a money ratio that you need to work out before you get into it?
All right, are we back?
Well, let me tell you. Okay, so for everybody that doesn't know, we kind of lost electricity here for a second. I'm actually out at the beach right now, at Carolina Beach, and we had just lost power, and because we're matter of fact, Michael's coming through right now. Hurricane Michael, for those of you who are wondering what's going on. So Hurricane Michael just came through, and it shut down the electricity here at the beach house, and so we're back, and we're going to pick up where we left off, and we're matter of fact going back live again on Facebook for those people who are wondering where we've been. So if you hear a glitch in the show, ladies and gentlemen, it's because we literally the wind came through and shut down our electricity for a moment, and we had to reconnect with Jeff Snell. And we're talking with Jeff Snell, CEO and founder of Enlign Business Brokers and Advisors. And we are talking about starting a business, and is what we're doing today. And of course, he's brought to you by the La Jolla Writers Conference, and that's LaJollaWritersConference.com. And so, Jeff, we before we got rudely interrupted by Hurricane Michael, we, we were talking about the money issue of, I want to get into a business. Is there a money ratio that we need to know? Did I lose you again? Hello? Jeff? Says that you're here, Jeff. All right, well, we lost Jeff again. This is the part, this is what happens, man. I mean, you're dependent on electricity.
All right.
We're back, round 3.
Yeah, well, you did mention to the listeners that we're at I haven't actually looked online, but I think we're at a stage 3 or stage 4 tropical storm. I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, central, northwest, east, and south, about dead center of the state where Jay resides most of the time, and it is pouring down rain here with interesting winds and trees swaying. So we're going to do the best we can.
Yeah.
I think where we left off, we were talking about some of the risk factors in starting a new business, and one of those that we were talking about specifically was capitalization.
Yep.
And capitalization, for those who don't use a lot of monetary terms, is simply how much money that you've brought to this endeavor to get it off the ground and hopefully get it to a cash flow positive state before you run out of said capital. So being undercapitalized is the number one reason that I see businesses fail or even not be able to achieve the growth that they're capable of, because what is counterintuitive to some is that growth can actually be very damaging and dangerous to a young company, because as you increase sales and service, depending upon your industry, you're having to carry receivables, which is the amount of money that the client owes you for delivering that product or service over time. And typically, commercial receivables are 30 days. What that means is, as you are more and more successful, you have more and more people that are owing you more and more money for 30 days. Well, your vendors, unless they're also providing you those same 30 or more day terms, you're going to get yourself into a crunch, and you're going to be very successful. Sales are going to improve month over month, quarter over quarter, perhaps even year over year, but your bank balance is going down and down and down. That doesn't mean that you're running the business inefficiently or that you're making bad business decisions. What in fact it means is you're probably making very good business decisions. Operationally, you're probably sound. You're efficient in your expense management, but simply by the sheer growth and the requirement to have capital to fund those sales of purchases and services that you've delivered to your clients puts some out of business, because then the vendors start tightening their terms, and a downward spiral can commence that ultimately can crush a business. So that's the number one concern that I have when I'm talking to someone that's contemplating starting a new business.
So, I mean, let's just run through an example. Let's say you're going to spend, you're going to get into a business. Let's just say $500,000, $500,000, right? And that's the cost of the business. That's the cost to buy the business. How much money should I probably have? Is there a percentage? Is there some sort of a percentage that says, okay, if you're going to buy a business that costs you $500,000, this is how much you should have on reserve?
Well, there is. Let me point out I guess a point of order, so to speak. So we're talking about starting a business, right. And in some people's definition, starting a business can be inclusive of buying a business. Right. But in my industry, which is business brokerage and helping people buy and sell businesses, we differentiate starting a business from buying a business as being really completely different animals. So starting a business is you're going to choose a name, you're going to choose an industry. Of course, you're going to have to bring some money for marketing and initial startup costs, perhaps some salaries, buying initial product to resell. You're going to have those costs. That's one way to get into business and being an entrepreneur. But another, and again, different in our view, way of becoming an entrepreneur is to buy a business. So when the question specifically asks about buying a business and financial ratios, those numbers are much more known and easier to discuss because we have a lot more data. A startup business can have so many variables, it's very difficult to talk definitively about what type of reserves might be appropriate. But when we're talking about purchasing a business, we're going to expect that we have at least a year, probably 3 and hopefully more years of financial information from which we can do what's called a working capital calculation. And we can look at that business's historical activity, its income, its expenses, and we can determine how much money or working capital is needed to operate that business without ever going below zero in your company's operating account. That's what, of course, everyone's trying to avoid. So working capital is, at a very simplistic term, the amount of money that a business owner chooses to keep in their operating account so that they never go below zero. And almost every business owner I've talked to can tell me, how much money do you like to keep in your business bank account? And without having to do any kind of fancy calculations or pull out a calculator, you can almost bet that's going to be the working capital they require as a new owner to continue operating the business in a similar fashion to the way that the seller or the founder operated the business before it was sold.
That's great information. Okay, so I first of all, I think this is really, really a great piece of information, because I think you're right when you say that when we talk about starting up a business, I think we kind of lump sum it, whether I'm doing this ground up from zero and I'm starting creating something from nothing basically, or I am purchasing something new and I'm starting something new because I'm purchasing it, I'm getting into a new field. I think that distinction is really, really important. And so let's talk about the buying business piece, because I think when people start a business, like for me, someone who has started from ground zero and is trying to build, has been building his thing, of speaking and authoring and my coaching and that type of thing. Someone who's been building that from the ground up. It's a very different animal. But there are people who want to start a new business by buying an existing piece of real estate or buy an existing business. So should they contact like you in order to get those evaluations, or where do they go to get those performance evaluations prior to purchasing, let's say, a new business?
Okay, let me answer a question you didn't ask that will end up answering it, if I may.
Okay, sure.
So in the United States, the leading business for sale website is bizbuysell.com. I'll give them a little plug, bizbuysell.com. Virtually every professional business broker in the country lists all of their clients there. And there's many for sale by owner listings as well, which would be where the business owner is listing the business themselves to sell without the assistance of a broker. Typically, a business buyer is going to identify what we call the target, the company that they want to buy, prior to identifying the broker. So unlike real estate, we don't typically have a broker representing the buyer. So in 15 years and several hundred transactions, as we said at the top of the show, I've only had one instance where a buyer was represented by a business broker. And that's because, different from real estate, where almost always the buyer and the seller have a realtor involved to help them through the process of, on the sell side, marketing, on the buy side, evaluating different properties, assisting with lending and the contracts, of course. In business brokerage, the buyer generally relies on their corporate counsel, which is a business transaction attorney. Now, notice that that's not the same phrase I used at the top of the hour when we were talking about the first step in starting a business would probably be contacting a business attorney. So a business attorney is someone who understands business law, contracts. They can file your LLC or your C Corp paperwork. They can assist in collections and general business type of things. But a business transaction attorney is different in that they specialize specifically in the purchase and sale of going concerns. Somebody who's a business attorney is not de facto qualified to be a business transaction attorney, although a business transaction attorney is certainly going to be able to file all of your corporate paperwork, et cetera, that you would expect of a more traditional business attorney. So with that being said, the purchase of a business is likely to fall on the seller's broker and the buyer's attorney to work through due diligence towards closing. So the short answer to your first question, although admittedly I answered a second question, is I would not, as a business buyer, look to retain a business broker. I would look to find the perfect target and then use qualified business transaction attorney to to help me with due diligence and documentation of that transaction from a letter of intent through the definitive document, which is usually called the asset purchase agreement or the definitive purchase agreement.
So okay, so let's you said you said some words here that I think are really important, because you said once you identify the perfect target, and what we're talking about is the perfect opportunity is what we're talking about here. Well, so give us, from your perspective, how should you go about evaluating something as being the perfect target or the perfect opportunity if you're looking to buy into a business that you're going to take over?
Oh, wonderful question. So, and this is a question. I chuckle because you mentioned earlier you get asked this question a lot. That's a question I get asked a lot. So, in identifying potential targets, buyers look for the same things almost in the same order. The first criteria is generally geography, because in general, people don't want to move. They're entrenched in their neighborhoods, their schools, their churches. They are interested in business, and many times people will relocate themselves and their families for a business opportunity. But in the vast majority of cases, they don't. So number one criteria is geography. Is the business physically located or doing business in an area that I already live in or I very much want to live in with my family?
Got it.
The second is industry, because we might have the perfect location, for me would be perhaps downtown Raleigh if I was looking at a business. But if the business does something that I have no interest in, perhaps it's a tire retreader, nothing wrong with tire retreaders, but I don't personally have an interest in owning one, then my second criteria, just because it's in Raleigh or in a location that I like, it isn't going to make it an ideal target. But let's assume that it is a business that I'm interested in and it's located where I want. The third criteria is going to be, is it a business that I can afford? Sure. But hand in hand with can I afford it is, will it provide what we call a livable wage after debt service? Because if it's in the right place, it's in the right industry, I'm going to enjoy it, it's going to be fun, and I can't afford it, well, that's kind of a non-starter. But even if I can afford it, but after my debt service, I can't maintain my lifestyle, I can't pay my mortgage, kids' tuition, perhaps food, insurance, all those things we all have, then of course that's a non-starter too. But let's assume that they are. So we've got it where we want, the kind of business we want, the price that we can afford that's going to produce a livable wage after our debt service. What do we have left? Well, then we have the question of, is it properly priced? Just because you can afford it and it produces the revenue or the cash flow after your debt service that you need doesn't mean that it's fairly priced. It could be grossly overpriced, and those answers still be yes. So it's important to have a general knowledge, and your corporate transaction counsel can certainly assist with this. And to some extent, the seller's broker is not your enemy. This is not like, we're walking into an episode of Law and Order where, both sides are pitted against one another. It's a very collaborative process, or it should be a collaborative process, where the buyer can and should be able to rely on the seller's broker to assist in their due diligence, answering questions, producing financial reports, recasting financial documents, et cetera. Even to the extent of providing leases, introducing landlord's broker to negotiate new leases, et cetera. So again, it's not necessary, in my opinion, and probably not even beneficial for a buyer to have a business broker. It's an added expense that I think has, a rate of return that's not equal to the cost.
I got you.
Assuming that you have the proper corporate counsel and a qualified business broker on the sell side who's working in a win-win capacity. So something that I'm asked in conjunction with that question very frequently that I'd like to speak to is, how do you determine if that business is properly priced?
Yeah,
if you've never bought a business before, how in the world do we decipher that? It's an interesting question that doesn't have any obvious answers. So again, we're going to have to speak in the realm of what happens in most cases, in most transactions. We're going to have outliers. If there's intellectual property involved, or there's certain factors that can make prices go up very quickly. Right. But in the absence of that, in our quote unquote normal transactions, what we're looking for is a business that's obviously profitable.
Right.
And we're going to look at that profit in our industry called seller discretionary earnings. There's a couple phrases for it, but we'll just limit it to that for the purposes of this podcast.
So you said,
your seller
discretionary earnings. So is there a simpler way of phrasing that, what that is, just for the listener's sake?
Well, there's a way that I think is simple, but some of the people I've shared it with don't think it's so simple. But I'll share it with you, and we can hammer it out.
Sure.
So my definition of seller discretionary earnings is the amount of money that the owner can take out of the business without harming it, and it's expressed as an annual figure.
Got it.
So, like, let's use. I love using hot dog carts as an example because I've never sold one and probably never will. But let's say we have a hot dog cart, and the hot dog cart is owned and operated by Joe. Joe sells thousands of hot dogs a year. He's got a great location. He's making $100,000 a year salary, but he's also paying for a trip to the Bahamas once a year with his family, which they're calling their annual meeting, legitimate tax deduction. He's also paying for his gas to and from the corner that he works his hot dog cart, which is not a Department of Treasury allowed business expense. That's considered a personal expense. He may donate $100 to his son's soccer team, or sponsor his daughter's ballet recital with a one-page advertisement. These are discretionary non-business expenses. So they get added to that $100,000 salary, and ultimately all of those add backs, or what we call recasting because it sounds nice, some people call it normalizing the financial statement. So they reflect what the new owner would expect to be able to do. Right. Doesn't matter if he spent $100 on Johnny's soccer team. The new owner could put that into W-2. He could leave it in the company. It's discretionary income, seller discretionary earnings. So if that number, when we're all done with our recast for Jim's hot dog cart, is $125,000 a year, we're going to expect that to sell for 2 to 3 times the $125,000. And you say, well, why? Well, you just pulled that out of the air, Jeff. What's that all about? Well, 2 to 3 times seller discretionary earnings means mathematically that if you were to buy Jim's company for 2 to 3 times $125,000, his seller discretionary earnings, that in 2 to 3 years after working that business the way that Jim worked it, and presumably also having $125,000 of seller discretionary earnings, it would be paid off. So that's your future cash flow. We're expecting $125,000 a year. Now, we're not paying, I haven't given you a debt service calculation, because if we're paying $250,000 to $325,000 for this business, we're probably going to put 10 to 15% down. The rest is going to be financed. And of course, we're going to have to pay that principal and interest out of the $125,000 of seller discretionary earnings. But the majority of that's principal, and it's really coming right back to us when we sell the business again anyway.
Right.
But that's an important ratio. That 2 to 3 times seller discretionary earnings is important. So if you're on BizBuySell and you see this great business and it says seller discretionary earnings is $100,000, but the asking price is $600,000, well, back into the math, that's 6 times seller discretionary earnings. Wow, that seems like double normal, right? Well, it is double normal. Let's find out why. It may be completely justified because the purchase price might include a $350,000 building.
Got it.
So we would net that out. It's really not a 6 times multiple. It's probably a 2.5 times multiple plus $350,000 building. But so that's one ratio that's 2 ratios that we want to know. Down payment to enterprise value and purchase price is 10 to 15%. You want to buy $1 million business, you need to have 100 to 150,000 liquid.
Right. Wow. So, okay. Okay. This is all right. So this is amazing information, because I think when people think that they're going to buy into a business and they're going to start thinking, I love what you said, first of all, and that is, and I want to make sure that everybody heard what you said. First of all, I don't care. Real estate's real estate, whether it's business or residential. Location is the number one factor for a variety of reasons. One, you want to, unless you have a hot dog cart where you can actually move your location. But the truth of the matter is that most of these businesses are stationary buildings. So you want to be in a location where you're going to want to live and where your business is going to be successful. I love that. I think secondly, it's got to match what you said, and I'm going to phrase it in a different way. it's got to match your aptitude, skills, abilities, and passions
Passion.
on some level, right? Because you cannot just get into a business thinking, okay, I'm just going to do this for the money. Because I'm going to tell you, if you're just going to do something for the money, eventually you're just going to hate it, because nobody wants to go to dread. No, you want to go to something that you're enjoying along the way, and that it fits what you're made to do. And we're all made to do different things. So I think that's really cool that those two things are at the top. And then of course 3 is the, do you have the financial wherewithal to be able to purchase it? And then what we're just talking about 4, is this really worth what you say it is? I mean, and I think that those 4 things are really critical, and I think they're really overlooked, because I've actually never heard anyone ever say those in that order, ever. I mean, I've heard location, but I've never heard anybody else talk about the other 3 in that order.
Well, I jumped in with you in stereo when you said passion, because without passion, I would not recommend somebody start a business or buy a business for the very, very same reason that you stated. It's not going to last. Right. You can make millions and millions of dollars a year. I have clients that make millions of dollars a year, but they don't like what they're doing. That's why they're selling. So if you think that the money is going to substitute or replace the passion, the fire in your belly, the enjoyment, that je ne sais quoi that wakes you up at 2 a.m. and says, I'm going to go ahead and write that proposal because I'm so excited about the opportunity. If that's not there, then guys just don't do it. I lecture regularly at UNC Keenan Flagler MBA school. Ted Zoller's the dean's fantastic program, a world class, rated top 3, top 5, depends on who you ask. They're in the top though. They're always in the conversation. Phenomenal program. I was there this past weekend judging a business plan competition, and there was a particular concept that was being pitched. We were in small rooms, 3 judges, one student, MBA student, and one of the judges asked him, are you really launching this business? Because it's an assignment. Right. There's no prerequisite or expectation that they actually launch these businesses, but it was a great idea. It was a really great idea. And he said, well, yeah, I think I can see how it would be really profitable, but I'm not excited about it.
Wow.
The passion wasn't there. He had a great business idea, and I wish I could share it. I can't, but sure. It's fantastic, well thought out. I mean, the guy got an A in the course. He got an A for the semester, and everybody graduated at the end of the contest this weekend. But if you don't have the passion, you're going to wake up one day, and it's just going to be for what? Because the money's not going to carry the day. You may think it will, but it doesn't.
Right. No, I no, you're right. I mean, I think this is a piece that people miss when it comes to whatever you're doing in life. I interviewed John Tamney a few weeks ago. He wrote a book, The End of Work: Why Your Passion Can Become Your Job, and great author, by the way. I really recommend people read it, and you listen to the podcast, because John, it's a few podcasts ago, and you can of course go to iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify. And by the way, it's really easy. If you're a Google Play user, just go www.and for a new direction, googleplay.com. You can listen to the podcast there. If you're an iTunes user, it's www.anditunes.com, and you can listen to it there. And by the way, we're talking with Jeff Snell, COO and founder of Enlign Business Brokers and Advisors. We're talking. Hey Jeff, this is Jay. Hi everybody. We're back again for the 3rd time. But I got to tell you, so when you do, I've done radio now for the last couple of years. I've been on a radio show, co-host a radio show, and we've had these type of issues happen before where you just go down. There is just, unless you have, even if you have a generator, there's really nothing you can do when the internet's gone and electricity goes off. Sorry, this is what happens, and especially because we're live on Facebook right now and doing this. And by the way, let me just reintroduce what we've been doing. We're talking with Jeff Snell, CEO and founder of Enlign Business Advisors. He's been gracious enough to be on the show today, and being patient enough for me to recall him on a couple different occasions. and we're talking about business, getting into business, whether it's starting from scratch, but we're talking about buying into business. And he's brought to you today by the La Jolla Writers Conference. That's LaJollaWritersConference.com, which is October 26th through 28th at the Hyatt Regency in La Jolla for nearly 2 decades. Community, intimate classes, personalized attention, ambiance, and a dedicated and outstanding faculty have annually converged to provide an intensive experience where writing becomes habit, habit breeds success, and writers become authors. And this is a terrific conference. There's going to be over 70 classes in which to choose. You have publishers, agents, screenwriters, writing and PR experts. You are going to have best-selling authors, publishers. I'm telling you, there's a number of classes that you're going to be able to go to. They're going to help you get through writing your book, how to write your book in the right way. It's going to be fantastic. There's over 1,600 writers conferences a year. The La Jolla Writers Conference is considered to be in the top 80 of those. So by Writers Digest. So check them out. Go to www.LaJollaWritersConference.com. That's La Jolla, LaJolla, WritersConference.com. Tell them you heard about us on A New Direction. And again, that's October 26th through 28th. So, Jeff, we were talking about buying into a business, and I think I was actually getting into talking about the sponsor of today's show when we got cut off. I think that's where we were at.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, absolutely. I'm just glad that, to my knowledge anyway, there's no Russian hackers involved in these technical difficulties, and it's purely Hurricane Michael related. So we'll keep our fingers crossed on that. But I think when the goblin struck last, you were talking about a prior guest who was very entertaining, as I recall.
Yeah.
And really, his message to me embodies the concept that if you love what you do, you'll never work another day in your life. Right. I realize that's a formal quote attributable to somebody else, but the point being, his point and our point, is that when you're looking at starting a business or perhaps buying a business, if you don't love it, you probably shouldn't even start down that path. But if you do, you can start using some of the tools that Jay and I have been talking about in valuing a business, finding a business transaction attorney that can assist you, and if you happen to be the buyer, where you can find a listing on bizbuysell.com and hopefully engage with the seller's broker who's experienced and competent and has a win-win mentality for that transaction, not only for his client, but of course for the buyer. And I'm really passionate about that concept because the first time that I had an individual contact me to represent them in the sale of the business that I had sold them the business it was ground changing. I had never contemplated, I hadn't planned for it, but I realized that here's an individual in a high value transaction, because it doesn't matter if someone's buying a $100,000 business or a $25 million business, and I've been involved in all in between. It's a lot of money to them. If you're engaged in a $100,000 transaction, it's because that's the range that is viable to you. And if you're in a $25 million transaction, it's because that's the range that's viable to you. And to you, the buyer, it's a lot of money. You want to make sure that you have a strong team around you, and that on the, I'll say opposite side, but it really should be a collaborative process. The opposite side being the seller side should be supportive of you and not an antagonist or a protagonist in the process.
So, and I mean, that's terrific advice, because I think, first of all, I think most people don't even understand what it takes to like buy a business and move into it. And I want to talk about something that's kind of more popular that maybe you can help us walk through here a little bit. And that's buying into a franchise. I have a friend who is a franchise business guy. I mean, he literally sells people franchises. I mean, that's what he does. And by the way, I just want to give a shout out, Carmen Marzella, who happens to be our business attorney, is joining us on the show today. He's listening in, and so thanks for listening, Carmen. But anyway, franchises. Let's talk. What's the pluses and minuses of getting into a franchise? Are there? I'm sure there's got to be negatives and both positives to it. So because some people will, I hear a lot of people go, I bought carpet cleaning franchise, or I bought a franchise for a convenience store, or a part of a franchise, or whatever the franchise is. How is that different, or is it?
Well, it is different. Franchising, I think most people are familiar, but I'll do a very quick synopsis. So franchising, think McDonald's, think Subway, think major global multi-billion-dollar brands that specialize in perfecting a business model, packaging it, and selling it and replicating it to franchisees. So you have a franchisor, that's the concept owner, and you have franchisees, and those are the individuals that purchase generally territories or locations. Different franchises work different ways, but essentially you're purchasing the right to represent that brand in a particular market or location. Very popular in food service, very popular in personal services. You mentioned carpet cleaning, et cetera. So the purpose and the success of the franchise concept, in my perspective, has been that it brings an opportunity that's been tested, vetted, and properly capitalized from a marketing perspective. So it'd be very expensive and time prohibitive to fully flesh out what a properly designed franchise system would have done for your single location. It also brings an operating plan and all the documents to go with it, employee agreements, employee handbooks, all the stuff that true entrepreneurs probably don't really care about, but we know we need, in a package where you can buy into that franchise system, follow their instructions, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but follow their plan and expect, quite frankly, to be successful because they've already tested it in other markets, in hundreds of markets in many cases. And you mentioned Carmen Marzella a moment ago. Carmen Marzella is probably the model transaction attorney that I was referencing several times throughout this call. He does incredible work based out of Raleigh, North Carolina, and he is no exaggeration, world-renowned franchise transaction attorney with the Dunkin' Donuts brand.
Yeah,
he himself has owned Dunkin' franchises, and he's world-class. There's just, frankly, no other way to summarize it. But getting back to franchises, as a business broker, franchises are a way for individuals who may not be as entrepreneurial as others to still be business owners and have a reasonable expectation of success. So I think the classic example is the IBM executive. We use that here in Raleigh because IBM has a large presence here, second probably only to their presence in New York. And when people decide that they no longer want to work for Big Blue or whatever big corporate is, and they're looking at business opportunities, they may not be as entrepreneurial as it takes to start something on their own, or even to buy a business that's not a franchise, that doesn't have all the structure that a franchise can bring. So franchising, in my view, is an opportunity for people to get into business, to be entrepreneurial, but kind of not ride coattails, but stand on the shoulders of the franchisor who has fully fleshed out, tested, and proven their model. Now, when it comes to franchise resales, as a business broker, I don't see the creme de la creme. My friend who owns 14 McDonald's in this county is never going to call me to sell them because there's an instant market and they're going to be sold. But the XYZ carpet cleaning franchise, for example, that was not particularly well thought out, might not be as legitimate as some other franchise systems. They're looking to sell because it's not working for them. They're typically looking to sell because their royalty payments are more than they can afford to pay themselves. Now, that's not always the franchisor's fault. Sometimes franchisees don't deliver. Sometimes they don't meet the commitment that the franchisor said they would need to be successful. So not throwing anyone under the bus,
sure.
But in general, franchising and franchise resales are a different animal than someone who's reached true retirement age and is looking to exit their business because they happen to be 72.
Got it.
Generally, someone who's selling the franchise, from my experience, is selling that franchise because they have not been able to be successful with it. So Some people love franchising, some people don't. There's a franchise broker that participates regularly. I mentioned earlier in the Keenan Flagler program, MBA school. Her name is Ann. She's out of Atlanta. She's a UNC MBA graduate, very well known, very well respected in franchise resale. She works exclusively helping individuals, usually displaced or retired corporate executives, match with a franchise system that meets the criteria that, frankly, we talked about earlier. That's universal. It's where they want geographically. It's an industry that they're interested in, that they can be passionate about, a keyword that we've touched on more than once in this podcast, that they can afford, that's going to generate a return after debt service that allows them to maintain their lifestyle.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're talking with Jeff Snell, COO and founder of Enlign Business Advisors. We're talking about getting into business, whether you're starting from scratch, whether you're going to buy a business. We've even just talked about franchising a little bit here and what the pros and cons are of that type of business, getting into that type of business. Jeff, one of the things that you're saying to me here as I'm listening to you in this conversation, and we've kind of thrown the word around a little bit, and that is the word entrepreneur. And I have folks who want to say that there's an entrepreneurial type of personality. As a psychological professional, I don't know that I agree with that. I think the entrepreneur has a certain set of skills, desires, passions, and maybe that's a personality. I don't know. But I've always thought that maybe there's a book out there somewhere that says, you may not be an entrepreneur. I mean, do you see? You've done so many business transactions, and you've sold businesses to people who probably have never owned a business before. I'm certain, probably on several occasions. Do you kind of get a sense of who's going to be successful? Those people who are buying a business. Do you get a sense? I mean, even before this transaction is closed, if they're going to be successful or not as a business owner?
It's not something that I consciously think about. But if I look back over the last 15 years of business purchases and sales, again, mostly on the sell side, but sometimes on the buy side, I expect every buyer to be successful. And I'm not looking through rose-colored glasses. The process almost guarantees it, and that almost is a key word. But when you're looking to buy a business, it's not like walking into Walmart and buying a case of Coca-Cola. Not anybody can do it. There's a process, and it's a lengthy process. It requires attention and focus on the part of everybody involved. And if someone is not a good fit, it seems to me that it's almost human nature that through that due diligence process, it's going to fall apart. And it's going to fall apart for a reason that nobody is upset about, because sometimes it just doesn't work out, and it's not meant to work out. But do I have the vision to say this seller is going to be, or I'm sorry, this buyer is going to be successful, or they're not? I don't. Or maybe I do, and my expectation that they're all going to be successful is predominantly correct. So in 15 years, hundreds of transactions. I apparently need to update the CV. Again, many of those papered by Carmen Marzella Law Group out of Cary, North Carolina. I've only had 3 transactions that the buyers went out of business that I'm aware of. Now, granted, I don't have vision on all the hundreds of transactions, but there's 3 that I'm aware of. And I'm told by a loan packager that I've worked with for many years and done hundreds of transactions with, that not a single Enlign Business Brokers transaction where the buyer had a commercial loan, which is virtually all of them, that was backed by the SBA. So had an SBA guarantee on their commercial loan, SBA Small Business Administration. Again, virtually every commercial loan is going to have an SBA guarantee because it's insurance for the bank in the event of a default. Not one SBA commercial loan default in 15 years through Enlign Business Brokers. I'm told that's statistically impossible. But I think it speaks to my vision that I expect them to be successful, because we do have a process where we represent business sellers that are probably pre-gamed to be successful. They've been successful up to the point that they engaged us. There's no reason to believe that a new operator with the tools and resources available to the seller also being available to the buyer, that they wouldn't continue to be successful. And again, one of the proudest moments I ever experienced is when a former buyer client becomes a seller client. And in two cases, I've been on the sell side, the buy side, the sell side and the buy side, and the sell side again 3 times. So probably not the answer you were looking for, but the success rate when acquiring a business is statistically very high, whereas the success rate when starting a business, if we're to believe statistics, which we've already acknowledged earlier in the podcast, can be used to prove anything. After 2 years, approximately half are not successful. So a business broker who was going to admit their bias and wanting to help people buy and sell businesses because that's how they earn their living would tell you that the probability for success in buying a business is much higher, and it's statistically higher with independent data than starting your own business. But a lot of times that has to do with the capital available, because some people don't have the capital available to purchase a successful ongoing operating concern, so they start one. And there's certainly no shame in that. I've started companies myself. I've bought companies myself. Different times in your life, different times in your career. Sometimes one just makes more sense than the other.
That's awesome. Folks, we're talking with Jeff Snell, and CEO and also the founder of Enlign Business and Brokers. And Jeff, I know that you've been gracious. You've given me more time. We've had a couple glitches because we've been down thanks to Hurricane Matthew, and special thanks to Hurricane Matthew. And special thanks also to La Jolla Writers Conference for being a sponsor of today's show and sponsoring Jeff, and of course A New Direction. And so we thank you. And if you want to find out more information about the La Jolla Writers Conference, which is being held October 26th through 28th at the Hyatt Regency La Jolla, just go to LaJollaWritersConference.com. That's La Jolla, LAJOLLA, writersconference.com. It's a great conference. It's also put on by, I'm going to be biased here as well. It's put on by my publicist who founded the La Jolla Writers Conference, and my publicist, strategiespr.com, has been an amazing group of people that I've been able to work with. And I'm telling you, they have taught me so much about how to save money writing a book and getting it published, getting it into bookstores, and that whole thing. So I really highly recommend La Jolla Writers, the La Jolla Writers Conference, because it's going to be great. And I think maybe next year I'll actually be speaking at that conference. So that's pretty cool too. So Jeff, as we kind of wrap things up here, first of all, I want to just say thank you. You've been amazing, and I knew you would be. And you were so gracious in doing this the last minute, and I am so thankful and grateful that you did that for me. And so I just want to make sure that I acknowledge publicly my appreciation and gratitude, because I certainly am. And you've also been a great mentor to me, and you've listened to me, and I think that's one of the most amazing things about you is throughout all your success, you still take time out for people. And I think that's, to me, that is one of the most awesome things about you that I think is so amazing, is that I know how busy you are. I know the type of person that you are, and yet you just are able to take that kind of time out. So thank you for doing that. And then so one of the things I ask every guest to do at the end of every show is I ask them, the show's called A New Direction. So if you were to kind of summarize, helping people find a new direction when it comes to starting a business, buying a business, what would you say to help people get on that first baby step into starting a new direction in this area?
Wow, that's a great question. The path to greatness is not paved. So the listeners that are interested in business ownership, I'd suggest that you start looking. Just play. You don't have to make a commitment. The internet's almost free. Certainly using websites like BizBuySell are free. Go on there and just look. Educate yourself as to what's available, and pay special attention to how it's being marketed. Look at those price ratios that we talked about. Is the asking price 2 to 3 times owner benefit or seller discretionary earnings? Is it in a location that you like? Is it an industry that you're interested in? And if you're serious, you need to have this conversation with yourself about making a life change and potentially being more entrepreneurial and stepping into the role of a business owner. It's a big decision. It's exciting. For those of us that have done it, I think virtually all of us would say there's nothing like it. It's phenomenal, and they would do it again every day if they had the chance. But take a look at what's available, and if you're driven, if you feel that passion, if there's a fire, contact that seller's broker and have a conversation with them. You don't have to prove yourself to that broker. Business brokers deal with first-time business owners every day of the week. We do not expect that you be experienced. We do not expect that you know the jargon. We don't expect that you know the legal issues. We have transaction attorneys that help us with that. All we expect is that you be genuine, have an interest in the business that you're asking about, and a good broker is going to help you hold your hand and walk you through that process as far through that process as you want to go. You have no obligation to make an offer, certainly no obligation to purchase, but get engaged, show up, and you might be surprised at what the outcome is.
That's awesome. And Jeff, last thing, how can people get a hold of you?
Well, probably the easiest way, our website is www.enlign.com, spelled ENLIGN.com. One of my email addresses is Jeff, Jeff, at enlign.com. My cell number is on the website. I answer every call that I can. It's fairly busy, but if I miss anyone and they leave a voicemail, I'll certainly call them back at my first opportunity.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I will be putting Jeff's information on the Jizzo website, and of course that'll transfer over to whether it's Spotify, iTunes, but I will make sure that you see his logo. You will get to see www.enlign.com. You'll see Jeff's beautiful face also there as well, with the summary there at the jizzo.com website. And that's JAYIZSO.com, and check that out. But certainly you can find us iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Spreaker, Google Play, Podcast Addict, and so many other places. But Jeff's information will be out there as well. And so go ahead.
Well, I'd like to end by saying that you can count on Jay as being completely authentic, reliable, and trustworthy, except when he says "my beautiful face," which is probably the largest misrepresentation that you will hear this week, if not this year. But otherwise, thank you very much for having me. It's an honor. You opened by talking about our friendship. I'd like to end the same way. I respect you as much or more than anybody else I can think of. I appreciate what you do for me, my business, my family. And your listeners and your sponsors. This is a gre's show, and being a part of it's been special. I hope I have an opportunity to come back and perhaps talk on some other topics.
Absolutely. I would love to do that with you. So I want you to stay with me as I close the show. So, hey, ladies and gentlemen, listen, we've been talking to Jeff Snell. He has been outstanding. You know what? He is the COO, CEO, president, founder of Enlign Business Brokers. But you know what? More than that, he's my friend. And one of the things that I know about each of us is that Jeff inspires me as I try to inspire him, but he inspires me. And it's part of this show is that we should inspire each other. That should be our goal. Because to help people find a new direction is if you're able to inspire someone else, you do not know what the possibilities that could be for them. It could be something as simple as a smile. It could be something as a strong handshake or just a simple word that says, you got this. Whatever it is, find a way to inspire others, because when you inspire others, they're going to inspire others as well, and it just keeps going. I'm going to look forward to seeing you next week. We've got another terrific show, and I'm going to be very excited about it, and I promise you, remember, find yourself a new direction and just take one baby step at a time, because one baby step will lead to the next, and that gets you into momentum, and I will talk to you next week. Ciao. Okay, wait, everybody, wait. We've got bonus content. Don't hang up that. No, do not click the stop button. Don't even hit pause. All right, we've got bonus content here on A New Direction. We were just talking with Jeff Snell, and we were talking about getting started in business, whether it's getting started as an entrepreneur or starting a new business, buying into a new business. But you know what? We've been going through Hurricane Michael here. I said Matthew, apologize. But we're going through Hurricane Michael right now, and Michael has been interrupting our show at least a couple times. So Jeff Snell, COO and founder of Enlign Business Brokers and Advisors, had this great idea of saying, okay, what does a business owner do in a storm? And he came up with some really great ideas. So Jeff, talk to us and my listeners and our listeners about, okay, so we've got Hurricane Michael. What does a business do?
All right, guys. Well, I really appreciate you guys hanging over for this bonus content. I hope it's going to be worth every second and more of your time. And right now, we're obviously talking about Hurricane Michael because it's on top of both of us. Jay's at the beach at his beach house, a beautiful place, but the weather's not great. He's lost power a couple times in this last podcast. I'm sitting in Raleigh. The wind is blowing. It's raining. I'm hoping, but not terribly concerned about trees falling on my house, but anything can happen. I work at home, and I wanted to talk to you guys about preparing your business for a storm. And I'm not selling insurance. I'm not gonna mention a property and casual guy. That's not what this is about. This is about protecting your business when the weather decides it's going to rear its head and potentially have an impact on your future success, which none of us want to have weather have an adverse effect on our business. So there's the obvious. We've got physical security. If you're a retailer and you're in the face of a storm, you're probably buying plyboard and boarding that up, okay? That's common sense. I'm not here to tell you that. You know how to do that. Now, if you have the capital and your business requires it, let's say you're a technology company, you better have a generator in the parking lot. It better have auto switches, meaning that when it senses the power goes off, it turns itself on. You want everything to be automated. Those are long-term or longer-term planning things. But let's talk about right now. The storm, it's not on top of me right now. It's still coming this way. It's going to get worse before it gets better. What can I do? What can you do? And this might be Hurricane Michael if you're in the Southeast today. If you're listening to this podcast in a year, it might be a tornado in the Midwest. It might be a tsunami in California. It does not matter. It's weather. It's out of our control. But what is in our control is protecting our businesses. And the scariest statistic I've ever seen, I'm a skeptic when it comes to statistics. I've told people numbers can prove anything you want them to, so I don't quote specific numbers. But in the high 90 percentile, businesses that have lost their data are not in business after 24 months. If you lose your QuickBooks file in 24 months, statistically, you're out of business. I don't care if you're the largest company in North Carolina or the smallest one. The odds say if you lose your data, you're done. And that's sad because it's so easy to fix. So number one on my digital checklist, data backups. Now, obviously, local backups are better than no backups. But if you're flooded, your local backup is gone too, because that hard drive, once it gets wet, it might be recoverable, but it's not reliable. You don't want to bet your business on that. Let's get an off-site cloud storage backup solution. Now, I'm not going to plug any of them. I use one. It's a big name. You can Google it. You'll find dozens of them. But the point is, subscribe to a service. It's probably going to cost you $79 to $119 a year, depending on what service you get and which vendor you select. But back up everything business related. If you've got servers, you want to have a server contract. I'm a smaller business. Everything that's important to me is on one PC, but I've got it backing up. It backs up in real time so that I can lose that computer. I can lose it to a lightning strike. I can lose it to a flood. I can lose it to theft. It doesn't matter, because once I replace that hardware, I can download it from the cloud from my service provider, and I'm back in business, and I'm not part of that 90+% that's not likely to be in business in 2 years. So that's the number one tip and trick when it comes to saving your business, when it comes to natural disasters or impending bad weather. The second is make sure you have redundant internet access. So much of our businesses now have been pushed to the cloud. We've got our accounting on the cloud. We've got our marketing, Facebook. Social media is obviously cloud-based, but if we can't access it, it's no longer part of our business. So make sure that you have redundant access. Now, it's not practical for most of us to have physical redundant lines coming to our business. So that would be, for example, AT&T fiber and Google fiber. You could have both. There's even very intelligent, fancy switches that will auto switch and load balance between them. But for most of us, that's not cost effective. So make sure that you know how to tether your cell phone to your computer. Sounds very simple, and it is very simple. Most plans allow it, but you need to know how to do it. On my phone, I actually require a USB connection because the Bluetooth doesn't happen to work. Well, I know that, and I know that before the storm. I know how to get redundant internet access if I need to, tethering my cell phone to my computer. But if you've not tried it and you've not tested it, you probably should. So what are we thinking about on a more global level when it comes to employees? Well, do we want our employees driving around when the wind's blowing and trees are falling and branches are falling out of the sky? No, we really don't. It's not good for their safety. It's not good for our image. It's not pro-employee. So this. All right. So ironically, while we're talking about storms and preparation, planning, we lost our connection. Jay and I at his beach house, and me in Raleigh with the storm. Electricity is an issue. So nothing better than nature to point out the very issues that we're talking about. So we were last talking about, my words, allowing employees to work from home. But in fact, allowing, I don't like that word. We're having them work from home, and we're testing how that works from a technology perspective, an effectiveness and efficiency perspective. I think in most cases it's a positive thing. I'm not saying shut down your corporate locations and your retail locations, but I think it's great for everybody to have a plan B in the event of inclement weather or anything else that you can communicate and conduct business when you're not physically together as you usually are in your office. So while we're talking about offices, whether you are in your office or at home, we haven't talked about this in probably decades because it's technically old technology, and that's uninterruptible power supplies. I owned a technology services company for 7 years. It was my first business sale, which led me to become the business broker that I am today. And I could not be more familiar with all the brands, phase technology, backups, the surge protectors. Believe me, from a technical perspective, I know all of that. But embarrassingly, about 6 months ago, I was
All right, we're still. We lost.
best power supply.
We just lost Jeff for a second, but he's back now. So, sorry, Jeff, we lost you for about 30 seconds there.
All right. Well, so let's rewind the tape going back to UPS systems. I was just saying that, in a prior life, I owned a technology company. If I know anything, it's uninterruptible power supplies, phase inverters, load balancers, surge protection. I get all that. But embarrassingly, 6 months ago, I was talking to my second largest client. We're editing a spreadsheet. We're actually doing a business valuation recast. And the power went out at my house. The weather wasn't even bad. It was, sometimes somebody hits a pole on the street at the top of the road and you lose power. Well, that's what happened. And I lost all my data. The changes that I had made during that call was very frustrating. So it reminded me, you know what, your APC surge protector died, I don't know, 3, 4, or 5 years ago. Didn't bother to replace it. Well, you need to have a UPS on your computer at work and at home. So we're talking about how to prepare your business for a storm. Having uninterruptible power supplies, it's not only good for a storm, it's good all the time. So let's get away from the blocking and tackling of how to defend ourselves against bad weather. And I'm wrapping up, bonus content. Let's talk briefly about how do you turn a storm situation into a marketing opportunity? Well, you guys probably know Jay is an incredibly successful speaker, author, incredible person. He's an advisor. He doesn't claim to be, but he gives great business advice as well. But he's also married to an incredible woman who's an incredible business person, Linda Kraft. She owns arguably the best residential brokerage in Wake County. She also has a craft commercial division, which is very successful and growing. She is also a marketing genius, hand in hand with Jay being a marketing genius. But together, I think they'll appreciate this last segment of my bonus content, which is marketing. And you're asking, what are you talking about marketing? This is Hurricane Michael. Cars are being flooded, homes are being flooded. potentially, and unfortunately, I've heard a couple lives have already been lost, and potentially more. I'm not looking at riding on the backs of devastation and negativity. That would not be what any of us are about. But legitimately, when we have a storm, what can we do to market our businesses that's not offensive and not inappropriate? Well, I would tell you that you should take the opportunity on social media to post whether you're open or not. Let your employees, your customers know that you'll be available or not, or how you will be available alternatively if you're not in your places of normal business. Let them know how to contact you. Let them know that through this storm, you were available. Now, what else can you do? You can leverage media outlets that otherwise most small businesses cannot, will not, or couldn't afford. So how do you do that? Well, radio stations and TV stations are all about protecting their communities. They want to provide announcements about what's going on in the area as it relates to the storm and the businesses. Go ahead and submit to your radio stations and your local television stations your operating hours and your disaster plans. Let your employees and your customers know this is how we're reacting to this weather situation or this natural disaster. And at the very least, they see your name, they see your logo, and they see that you care. So wrapping up all of these three talking points of physical safety, we want to board up our physical offices, our retail locations, assuming that we have the time to do so safely. Long-term planning, we want to have power redundancy. We want to have generators that will be auto switching so that when we do lose power, we have power back and we can continue operations. Digitally, we want to make sure that all of our mission critical data, certainly our accounting data, but our client data, contracts, everything that's on our servers and on our main PCs is being backed up remotely, meaning not at our physical locations, not your place of business, not your home, but the cloud. We want to go to a third-party resource where everything is, in a data center that has terabytes and terabytes of data that they're then backing up again, so that we're not falling victim to the statistic of 24 months after a data loss, we're not in business anymore. We want to have redundant internet access at a very high sophisticated level. That means hard lines with switches that are load balancing and auto switching. But at a very basic level, we want to tether our cell phones. It's not high tech, but you got to test it. The first time I did it, it didn't work. Probably the first couple times I tested it didn't work, but now I know that it works, and it provides a level of comfort that's important in protecting our business and making sure that we can serve our clients and be in contact with our employees. So let our employees in bad weather work from home. Let's give them the tools that they need to be effective. Let's have UPS, uninterruptible power supplies on our computers, simply so that in any event, whether it's a major weather event where somebody hits a telephone pole on the corner, we're not going to lose our data. We're also not going to have a hard restart that could corrupt our operating system and whatnot. And then finally, as we said on marketing, let's take advantage, not unfair advantage, but let's take advantage of the marketing opportunity to announce in social media, radio, and television what our intentions are on how we're going to work to support our clients and communicate with our employees during inclement weather.
Wow. Folks, first time ever on A New Direction, we unleashed bonus content. That's right, we unleashed bonus content, and how fitting it was during Hurricane Michael and having Jeff Snell, COO, founder of Enlign Business Brokers. Just check out www.enlign.com. That's enlign.com. Check him out. He was so gracious to call me back, said, I got some additional content, and he gave it to us right there. Jeff, awesome. I mean, I love every one of those points. We've gone through all this stuff. I don't have a generator here. I probably need to come up with a backup plan for that here for sure, if I'm going to continue to do my radio show in the middle of a hurricane. So I need to do that for sure. That's cool. That was really great stuff. Folks, remember, reach out to Jeff if you want to learn anything about this, about buying, selling a business. You want to go with Enlign Business Advisors. And again, it's www.enlign.com, ENLIGN.com. Check them out. They have a great website. It's easy to access, easy to get around. Jeff is available to be contacted. His Actually, his cell phone's right there, but you can contact him by email as well. Check him out. He's all over social media. Enlign has a Facebook page. They're part of LinkedIn. They're also part of Twitter. So check them out. I'm telling you, you really want to get as much information as you can, and I'm telling you, he's the person that can do it. Jeff, thanks again for this bonus content. This is outstanding. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, Jay. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for giving me access to all your listeners. I hope that they found value in the discussion about business acquisition and startups, as well as this little bonus content about how to make sure we're prepared when the unexpected happens. So thank you very much. Enjoyed the opportunity, and of course, as always, our friendship. Thank you very much, Jay.
Well, thanks. This was a lot of fun. Thank you. I appreciate it so much. And so, all right, everybody, that was the show. Wow, bonus content show. All right, check us out next week. All right, everyone. All right, I'll look forward to seeing you then.